Hi, I'm Lisa Dalton, and welcome to Creative Urge. On this show, you will meet one of the most successful and creative designers in the television industry, Mr. Robert Blackman. He is an Emmy Award winner and designer for Star Trek: The Next Generation, and is now working on Deep Space Nine. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
We're very glad to have you here. Now, I understand that you have worked with many great stars, people on films and television projects such as Anne Bancroft and Sissy Spacek and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Leslie Ann Warren, Glenn Close, Keith Carradine. Tell me, how did you get started in this whole industry?
Gosh, well, I was interested in design as a kid in high school, so I started at about 16 doing scenery. And went to an undergraduate school and a graduate school, and then into professional life, and did theater for about 14, 16 years, and then moved to Los Angeles about 8 years ago and started just working my way kind of up the ladder. Now,
when you were in school, undergraduate school, where did you attend?
The University of Texas at Austin.
And were you in the design department
I was
there?
in I have a BA in theater there, and I was in the design program, theatrical design.
And then you did some graduate work? Did you?
Yes, School of Drama. I have a MFA there in design.
From Yale?
Yes.
Yale. And do you feel that your education was critical there, or was it more once you got out and started working that?
My formal education was very important to me as a human being, as development. I don't think it's necessarily essential for each person, but for me it was essential and was a great basis, a great foundation to go on and then develop and experiment and keep learning as I go.
Now, I have a question. Fairly shortly, we're going to see some of the costumes that have been used on the Star Trek: The Next Generation and on Deep Space Nine. I was wondering if you could talk for just a moment about what are some of the elements that go into deciding, you know, what kind of costume do you aside from, I imagine, budget, but character, psychological influences, what kind of things?
All of that, all of those things. Because of my training in theater, I tend to work from text and character development, how the writers have written the characters. And of course, it's my interpretation of that to some degree, which is what's the idea, where the ideas sort of spring from, who these people are. Then what the actual garment becomes is a matter, it's an interesting process just depending on where I'm at. It might be a piece of fabric that says something to me that then I'll say, well, if we do it this way or that way or so on and so forth, it'll work out this way. It may be going and saying, well, it needs to be exotic in some peculiar way, so I'll go and look at clothes from exotic countries and then sort of twist it all around and try to make it seem future forward rather than long ago and far away.
Are you a science fiction buff?
No, I'm not. People ask me that, and I'm not. I'm a designer, and I just happen to be designing in the future right now.
Well, that's great. Then why don't we get ready to take a look here at some of the costumes that we'll be seeing in the future and have seen in the past.
Well, I think it's a bit of all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are now going to go to our fashion show, and we have for our first model, we have Aaron Akins. Aaron is here. He's actually had the opportunity to appear in Star Trek, but now he's wearing what, Robert?
He's wearing a new uniform designed for Deep Space Nine, which is the new series to air the first week of January.
And what would some of the elements be that are a little different? There's a certain kind of casualness?
Well, the colors remain the same because of how that works out just technically within the Starfleet. But the shape and the actual placement of the color is different. It's meant to look more casual and sort of more utilitarian.
It's very interesting how the legs come down over the shoes.
The notion is to not break line, to keep them as long as possible.
As long as possible. Thank you, Aaron. Our next model is going to be Rose Rowland. And here's Rose.
Rose is wearing also a new uniform from Deep Space Nine, and this uniform appears on the Bajorans. It's a military uniform.
Very nice boots, Rose. Thank you very much. Our next model is William Blair, who actually worked on Deep Space Nine in the pilot.
Indeed. William was one of the kind of first Cardassians in these new uniforms. The Cardassians we developed about 2 years ago on The Next Generation, and then for the pilot, rethought them and came up with this kind of sinister, they're the new villains. The
new villains, yes. We see that villainous look in in William's eyes. Thank you very much, William. I don't think I'd like to run into him in a dark alley. Now we're going to have Diana Hale. There's Diana.
Diana is wearing an outfit worn by Denise Crosby, a Sela, and it is a Romulan officer.
And she looks very intimidating with those
extended shoulders and kind of
that
dominating belt.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes. Thank you, Diana. Thank you very much. Now we have our next model, Michael Torrey. Ooh.
Michael is wearing one of the more fantasy outfits that we do. We don't do these frequently. This is from an episode called The Cost of Living, in which Deanna Troy's mother takes Alexander Worf to the holodeck to visit this mythical land. And this is a costume of a learner.
Aha. Well, thank you very much, Michael. Well, like that, girls? Our next we have Phyllis Elliott. Oh, this is for the men, huh?
Right. It is. Phyllis is wearing an outfit that was designed for an episode called The Perfect Mate. And it was about a metamorph, a particular race of people that create a woman who, as she matures, develops, will bond with a male and become his sexual fantasy.
Oh, well,
and this is one or two outfits that we did for her for the episode. She has actually brought out a stasis too soon, and so she has not met her perfect mate, and so she tends to attract all males and cause much ruckusing and carrying on.
I can see in that outfit that would certainly be effective. Thank you, Phyllis. Sorry. Thank you, Phyllis. Now we have Bernadette Hale.
Bernadette's wearing a Vulcan outfit.
Ah.
And this was worn actually by Perrin, the wife of Sarek and the father of Spock. In the last episode that we saw Sarek before he died.
Very regal looking.
Absolutely,
yes.
They are royalty.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. Now we have Janice Ito.
Janice is wearing an outfit that was designed for the wedding of Officer O'Brien and Keiko, the ship's botanist on The Next Generation. And it was a sort of combination of, what am I saying, of styles. He is Irish and she is Japanese, and so we chose a traditional Japanese outfit. I mean, this is actually a wedding kimono, but used very sort of modern fabrics to try to make it move far into the future.
It's beautiful. Thank you very much, Janice.
Janice is very patient. They're not comfortable to wear, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And now we have George Milan.
George is wearing an outfit worn by a minister of state. This was also from Perfect Mate, and he is the man that is accompanying the metamorph to this treaty meeting in which she will be presented to a warring faction as the perfect mate.
Aha, and is that the next costume we have with Pam Teagarden?
We do. We have Pam in the actual wedding outfit that the metamorph
Thank you, George.
wore.
You welcome Pam on.
And Pam is in a wedding dress. I mean, that's all I can say.
Yes.
Yeah,
well, it's beautiful and
plenty of it.
Plenty of it now. Thank you very much, Pam. How long does it take to make an outfit like that, Rob?
That one was from sort of start to finish about 5 days. It probably would have gone faster, but I was having some actual design problems, kind of a stoppage, and I couldn't quite. I had an image, but I couldn't get the thing to be quite what it was that I saw. So it means they sort of stop working in the workroom, and the dress sits on a form, and I stare at it for hours.
Well,
it's a little frustrating to all concerned.
I'm sure. That wedding dress concludes our fashion show, and I'd like to have a nice round of applause for the fashions and
the models.
Absolutely. Thank you to our models, who are all working actors.
Yes, it's great.
Out there. And now I'd like to ask you just a few more questions. I want to go back to the development process here and find out a little more about the role of the director and the role of the producer in your creations.
Well, it's different in television than it is in theater, which is where the basis of my training comes from. It's usually a collaboration between designer and director in theater. A mutual interpretation of the script and a kind of a joint collaboration, we hope, and off you go and you do whatever you're going to do. In television it's different because the director is not the constant. The producer is the constant, and usually they are the writer-producer or the conceiver-producer. So I do all my work through the producer and very seldom through the director. Now and again there's a director that has a particular idea or image, and sometimes that's completely taken away by the producer if it seems inappropriate.
I see. At what stage do you have a meeting with the producer to decide all exactly what's going to happen?
We get the scripts sometimes 7 days ahead, but most likely about 7 days ahead before we have to start doing it. And as soon as I read it, I try to scribble down some ideas and go and talk to. I talk to Rick Berman in regards to these things, and so I talk to Rick at that point. And sometimes I have things that I've clipped out of magazines that might be a collar shape or a skirt shape or a thing, or I've scribbled something, or I've got a piece of something or other that over a period of time I've had them mess around as a texture. I do a lot of stuff with texture, so the surface is always what I refer to as broken. It's not a flat surface, there's always something going on it. So they're like little kind of clues to him as to what I'm going to do. He trusts me pretty much with color, so color is not an issue at all. It's usually silhouette and sometimes interpretation. Sometimes I kind of, has to kind of reel me in.
Do you have certain color themes for different kinds of people and different lands, or? Yeah,
there are basic notions that happen, but the odd thing with television and with television with a lot of special effects is that they do a lot of blue screen work, and so color is altered greatly from what you see on Star Trek is not the pure color, because it's color corrected from, we shoot on film and then we transfer to tape, and at that point it's color corrected to green, keeping flesh tone as the normalcy, but they push as far as they can to green without messing up the flesh tone in order to preserve and ensure the fact that when they do blue screen, they don't have clouds running across somebody's, or starfield or warp running across somebody's outfit.
For those of you who are not familiar with the blue screen process, it's one where they act in front of a blank screen that's blue, and later on they put an image in behind it. So this is what happens in that process. Was there any particular...
So the point of the point of that is that the color is so altered that I come up with concepts and ideas and sort of things about color, but it's really 50-50 as to whether it ever is viewed the way it is conceived.
Were there any particular costumes that were terribly challenging for you?
I think they're all challenging. I mean, none of them are very easy to do, because it's not like doing historical plays where you have a kind of bulk of source material that you can go back to and look at and say, well, maybe that button or that ruffle or that idea, or it's not present stuff where you can just say, well, I'll go to Bullock's and there it'll be. Or I'll take this idea from Bullock's and then I'll have it made in another color or another whatever. So it's mixing of all the things that you can conceive of. And I'm not a futurist. So I'm not one that says, well, in 4 centuries, the button's going to turn into, I imagine it to be. I'm not one of those people. I'm mostly sort of character, and I think, I hope, sort of line and silhouette kind of a guy. I think you have to, I always say, I'm so glad that I did so much Shakespeare and so much dance.
Yes, you worked a lot with the San Francisco
the American Conservatory
ACT,
Theater,
yes.
But the thing is that I've done so much sort of classical, if you look at some of these outfits, you say, oh, well, they look like they could be sort of Shakespearean outfits, or they could be dance outfits. And having that experience has helped me a lot to kind of get things through the workroom fast, because there's certain knowledge about those fabrics and shapes and movements that make it easier to get the things done.
You have to work a lot with those stretch fabrics, which function very differently than a woven.
Yeah.
And that's...
and each one is different. So you can bring in 4 stretch fabrics and you've got 4 different kinds of things.
Right. Were there any that were particularly amusing for you, funny costumes?
Well, there are characters that I find very amusing. And for Deep Space Nine, I've sort of reinvestigated the Ferengi, which are those little short guys with the big ears and those funny kind of lumpy heads. And they're funny guys. Usually, they're small actors. They're only male because their wives or the female Ferengis are at home because they only appear naked in their society. So obviously, they can't be on television. So we only see male Ferengis. Well, but they're these they're little guys. They're all 5'7" and under, and I don't know, they're killingly funny to me with those little snaggle teeth, and they're so mercenary and avarice, and they just make me giggle. They do. They're just always up to something, and they never quite succeed. And
have you added elements to what they're wearing to sort of
Well, I've used the same silhouette because it's a very recognizable thing, and one of the things that I've started doing, or that I've done since I've started on Star Trek, is to take a sort of a recognizable silhouette, so that since we have, it's kind of, Alien a Week. It's kind of, it's the old, movie of the week, disease of the week. It's now, for me, Alien of the Week. And so, in order to make certain things recognizable easily for the fans, silhouette becomes an important thing for me. But coming up with these sort of civilian things, they're able to take their jackets off and they have shirt and pants on and they can roll their sleeves up and they're weird kind of sickly greens and strange oranges, and they're great. And the group of actors we have playing them are wonderful, and so they encourage you to go as far as you possibly could.
Well, that's great. We're going to open the floor up in just a moment to some of our studio audience, which consists partly of students from USC, LA City College, and UCLA, who are all interested in costume design.
Oh, great.
And the rest are professional actors as well. But before I go to opening up the floor, I wanted to ask you just a little bit about if you have tips for actors regarding wardrobe and costuming, either the important things they should know about the fitting process, or anything that might be helpful.
Yeah, that's a big question. You're naughty. Every costume designer has their sort of way of working, and I think it's very easy for actors to come in with a certain agenda, from having either been burned or feeling that they weren't represented properly or that they were manipulated around. Fortunately, in Star Trek, you are manipulated. You wear funny outfits and a lot of rubber on your face, and you can't help but feel a little weird. I must say, I'm in my 4th season now with Star Trek, and I really feel that I have had a blessed journey with this job, which I refer to as the best job I've ever had, because of the fact that the actors are very skilled. A lot of them come from legitimate theater and understand there's a certain protocol that you go through, which is essentially, there are certainly inputs and things that you can do, but you are creating a character. It is not about selling yourself as a commodity. So it's not necessarily what you would feel comfortable to walk down the street in. And I would say this about movies or television and so on and so forth. I find in Los Angeles the biggest pitfall is that actors tend to want to market themselves rather than their ability to act. And I sometimes feel that what I'm really dealing with in some instances are personalities rather than actors. Mm-hmm. And I feel that creating character is a much more interesting thing to do, for me to do, and for me to collaborate with an actor on. And I'm more than willing if they say, oh, this is, what a great idea. Could we do this, or could we do that? Or, I mean, how they bring it to themselves. But if they come in and they are in resistance to the idea, it becomes more difficult and uninteresting and unpleasant for almost everyone concerned.
Well, thank you. We are going to go now, actually, to visit you in the studio. Before we open the floor for questions, we took a trip over to see where Mr. Blackman does all of his work, and we actually had the opportunity to watch a fitting. So watch now. We'll go to that. This is where Emmy Award winner Robert Blackman has his workroom, where he puts together the ideas for Star Trek The Next Generation and for the new series Deep Space Nine. This is where the creative urge becomes reality, here in this workroom. Now, Robert, can you please take us through a little tour of the workroom and let us know how this all comes about?
Well, certainly. Well, I present to cutter fitters who are the interpreters of the design. This then is presented to them, and they figure out how to make this from a two-dimensional form to a three-dimensional form. They take usually a dress form, a stand we sometimes call them, and pat it to shape to the actor. So we have the actor's measurements, that's patted out to shape, or sometimes the form is close to their shape. Then just straight muslin, a very inexpensive fabric, is draped onto it in a way, pinned on. You can see there's even a waist measurement here and so on and so forth. And they then fit this muslin to that shape with instructions that and ways we've talked about how to break up the pattern, where to put certain kinds of details, all of that stuff. Then they go to fabric. And we then have a fitting with the actor, and we alter it to fit them, and then we finish the garment. It's sort of a simplified way, but there are many other steps in between that. For instance, this fabric is dyed. It doesn't come as black and white houndstooth. We dye it green, so that's a step that's in there. We might pleat stuff, cord it, quilt it, trapunto it. I mean, any number of techniques.
What is trapunto?
Trapunto is a kind of stuffing technique in which you take a piece of fabric that has a certain kind of give to it, and you stitch it in a pattern, then you slit the back. It's stitched to two layers. You slit the back, and then you stuff it. So the top surface takes on a three-dimensional shape. So we did that for the Cardassians. In fact, this section of the sketch that just looks like cross-hatching here is actually trapunto. Now, this particular garment is unique in that it is rubber. So we make the bottom part, which is a jumpsuit, but this upper part, this sort of short-sleeved kind of breastplated piece, was made at a sculpting shop. But what we provided them with were pieces of leather that were treated in special kind of techniques that they then embedded in the leather, made a mold of, and then they blow it with rubber. They fill the mold with rubber, and so you get all that very specific technique and very specific texture, but it's very flexible so the actor can move in it, because if not, it would be very difficult to move in. They're very successful. I'm very pleased with them, and they're for Deep Space Nine. I have 4 cutter fitters and a tailor in the shop, and then roughly 8 drapers, who are the ladies who interpret and sew the pattern pieces together. So it's a large shop, not counting a support staff who organizes and does other things like costume breakdowns and analyzing the scripts so that the garments end up on the right person at the right time and in the right continuity. And that's another host staff that sits over there at all those desks. So it's a lot.
Yes.
We have a lot. This is a garment that's in pieces for Odo, a shapeshifter in Deep Space Nine. Someone who can be human, but then can turn into a chair right in front of your very eyes. They're all working on Odo, it looks like. All 3 of these ladies.
Great.
Back in this area, we do special projects. We make all of our own sort of costume props. These are, again, pieces that are cast out of rubber and then attached to the Cardassians as their sort of communicators, so that they comm badges. And so that's all done. These were done elsewhere. We paint them and finish them here and put all the backings on them. These are belts for the Bajorans, who are another race that are on Deep Space Nine. They originated on Star Trek with a character called Lauren. I can never say her last name right. Ro Lauren, who was Michelle Forbes, and it was a very popular character, and so they've brought that race into the new series. Right here, this is the Deep Space Nine racks. Here we go. One of our Cardassian breastplates. They're on special, they weigh a lot, so they're on special hangers made out of 2x4s and steel. But you can see what I'm talking about. This is the trapunto leather that we then had embedded in the clay, and you can even see that you get the leather texture on it. And this is another kind of leather that was sewn onto elastic to make this sort of wiggly thing. And then it's all put into the clay mold and then cast, and then this is just foam that has been blown into this compressed mold to get the shape. They all adjust the size, so they're Velcroed in lots of different places, and the backs are great because you can't tell. They have no visible openings, and how that works is that there's a whole piece that Velcros on and then it zips underneath it. So it's all kind of, I think, cleverly done so that we don't know exactly how they get in and out of these. These are the suits they wear underneath them, which are super spandex that has been dyed, especially this color, and then pleated up, and this cording is put in, and so these are panels that move. What we have to do is, because the cost of these objects is sizable, so we have to make them so they are adjustable to a varying range of actors' bodies. We have certain height requirements that we try to keep going for certain races, so that at least the vertical measurement, which is a more difficult one to deal with, crotch to shoulder, say. I mean, it's hard to deal with that measurement. We try to keep that as constant as possible. But even here, we've made them with a seam that goes across so that we can adjust that measurement. So we mostly have to deal with the horizontal measurements. And so all of this is devised so that that can be handled in that manner.
How about the question of actor perspiration and everything? They have to stay a long time?
Yes, they do. They're hot. If that's the question you're asking me, yes, they're warm costumes. They don't seem to so far. They've been wearing them now for, different actors have been wearing them for a good 10 weeks. And they don't seem to be, they put them on and they don't take them off. So they're warm, but the stages are cool enough. Now, these are launderable. This obviously is not launderable. We can use, if they don't seem to be retaining odor at this point. So if they do, we use something called NBAC on them, which kills ENS bacteria, is what it is. So it's a disinfectant that you can spray on that will completely sanitize them. These are cleaned after every wearing, and then all the underpinnings. They have special trunks and special T-shirts that they wear that are all completely laundered, so they're fresh every day. Because who wants to wear somebody else's whatever it is they might have? Lord. Anyway, let me put this back so we don't get it out of order and I get in trouble. Now, also right here, we might talk about, for those Star Trek fans, this is bundled up here, are a series of mock-ups that we did for both the Bajoran and the new Starfleet uniforms. And we'll get over and just see those in a minute. But these are, again, I was trying some experiments with actually heavy canvas, this is cotton twill, to see if I could make them so that they would breathe more and they would have a kind of a different quality to them than the Starfleet uniforms that we have now, which are, if you are a non-commissioned officer, you wear spandex, and if you are a commissioned officer, you wear a two-piece wool. I couldn't make it work because they just wrinkle too much, and it doesn't really hold. During a day's shooting, you would see a difference from the beginning of the day that they shot to the end of the day, so there would be no way to keep the continuity going. They would wrinkle too much. But it was an admirable try to make them a little bit more comfortable, but it didn't last very long. So here's a series of, and this is what we did. These are the prototypes, and we went through about, I'd say, a good dozen to just get the Starfleet uniform design going. The Bajorn was it was a more concrete idea, and we weren't trying to spring off of an existing idea, so you could go straight to it, and so that only took about 3 or 4 prototypes. But all of it, none of it is just, we don't just come up with the idea and draw it. It's prototyped, it's tested on camera, the color is tested, the fabric is tested, it's tested against the scenery, and this is before we have actors, actual names to put and body shapes to put to the garments, and then we start. Then we sort of start fresh with the real fabric and with the real thing and do them. This is all kind of weird leather and carpet pads and studs and all manner of things put together, and a kind of a form of trapunto, and it's pretty good looking. It's kind of massive and rustic looking. These were some aliens we did in the pilot that were walk-bys, and I found this fabric, which is fairly, let me pull this out so we can see it, fairly peculiar stuff, and we made just simple outfits, and then out of this swimsuit fabric, we then overpainted. So we made, the fabric is really just lavender, kind of seersucker lycra, and then went over it and overpainted it all so that it would tie in with this, so that when they're on, they sort of look like one kind of outfit, rather than a jumpsuit and a little jacket. Here's a great one. This one is actually one I recycled. It was something I had done on The Next Generation, and it was on a view screen, and it ended up only being seen from this point. So we had it, and so they had this alien we needed, and this was a piece of work because, as you can see, it's fragmented, sort of in a kind of, I don't know what, kind of a computer way, kind of a way that looks like those sort of strange fragmentings you see on just mechanical things. When you open a panel on a computer or something. But to get it so that it would stretch, so there was just 1/4 of an inch between each piece, was not pleasant. The cutter fitter was really happy with that idea. Oh, I'm sure. This is just some aliens that it's hard to see what they are now because it's upside down. This is a guy that has, his alien head has these great huge shoulders on it. So this is how it goes. It wraps around this way, and you see is this prosthetic, these rubber shoulders coming up. Here's an alien lady in a kind of contour dress. Here is Carol. Excuse me, I have to do my job now. Carol,
hi.
Step this way so you can be on camera. Carol, you have to. What? This is Carol Coons, by the way, my supervisor and right-hand man.
Hi.
Person.
We have somebody that's been in the fitting room for 10 minutes, and I was wondering,
sure,
do you want to do this fitting?
Who is this?
It's the guy in the gray, the outfit. Is it Cermak? Cermak.
Oh, maybe Cermak.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to a fitting room now. These are our fitting rooms. We have 6 of these hard-walled, kind of carpeted rooms. They're pretty nice. I'm happy with them.
And what's your name?
Matthew Faison.
Right.
Welcome, Matthew.
And Matthew's playing a character called Cermak.
Dr. Cermak.
Yes, exactly. He's very evil. I'm sorry to say it, Matthew. You have
nothing in here but
it's hollow, absolutely, absolutely painful.
It's awful.
It is.
It's a terrible thing, and I'm going to do it.
Okay. So I need to be looking at this. Okay. Vic, the jumpsuit collar needs to stand higher.
Okay.
I think it needs to have more going on it. We can talk about that later. The baseline on the jacket is fine. Let's cord that with the velour around so that we finish it that way. Yeah, I think you can take it in at the hip just a little bit more. You can make it narrow at the ankle and then have it kind of mushroom over the shoe. So it goes like that with the stirrup. So it pulls down, okay?
Great fabric.
Yeah, it is good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very comfortable, too.
Yeah, it's a cotton lycra. It's something I've found here in town, and ordered up from New York, so it looks like it's something else, but it's actually breathable, which is awfully nice.
Yes, yeah. Fortunately, this time there's not such a problem.
Yeah, but it's not spandex, which does not breathe. This looks good. Thank you. Good job. One of the ideas that we had for Deep Space Nine was to make the Federation, it's a space station. It's a working kind of factory in a way. Out, a community huge, but out in the furthest extremes of our universe. So the idea was to make them more accessible, not to have them, I mean, on Star Trek the uniforms are beautiful and they look great and they're very sort of vertical and pristine and very noble looking. Yes. But these were to make them, you know, kind of a more rugged, like mechanics in a way. So using sort of mechanics overalls and the NASA one-piece overall that they use for the space guys, I came up with this thing in which they wear cotton lycra T-shirts underneath, and then jackets in which they just have a color yoke. These colors mean something. Red is command. Gold is security and operations, blue is science and medical. So they give them a kind of a category as to what their occupation is, either on the ship or on the space station. But these open up in a varying different degrees of these famous and fabulous invisible zippers that make it seem like there are no visible closures. We can't have buttons or snaps or zippers that are visible. And then they gather in at the waist, and they still stir up. So there is this kind of pressure, but they're lightweight wool gabardine, and the actors seem to love them. You know, I mean, they haven't worn them for a while, so we'll see. But they, you know, for a long period of time, but they really seem to love them. So that some of them roll their sleeves up. The T-shirts are pushed up. They're opened low. So we get to see people sort of working, actually mechanics in there fixing the space station. So with that as one look, then the space station was built by the Cardassians to monitor Bajor, which is a planet that it circles. And the Cardassians were strip mining the planet and essentially taking all of the minerals and any kind of wealth on the planet away from them. When that panned out, it was all gone, they left. So the Federation has come in. The space station itself is Cardassian by design, so it's very peculiar and much different looking than we're used to on Star Trek. And then we have the Bajorans, Ro Lauren, who I spoke of previously. She was one of them. We had only seen like a half a dozen up to this point, so now we have a whole community of them and a military. So with the Starfleet being kind of casual and more at work, I came up with a design for, get this unfettered here, of again, I'm using a lot of cotton lycra because it breathes better, and and I can get it in texture. And then, so they are tunics that come down fairly low, and they're very shaped. And they wear, you saw them on the table, we were sort of in these rubber belts over them. It's made out of floor mat, and then it's bound with leather, and we do all this in-house, and cut out, and they look pretty good. And then it's quilted lambskin for the sleeves. And that's what these are. They come in two colors. You can get it in your lovely rust or your fabulous dove gray. And again, those delineate job occupation and what they do on the ship. Well, what we have with that then there are workers who are firefighters and kind of janitorial service that have kind of these service uniforms. There are nurses. We've got some elsewhere. There are, slowly but surely, there's a whole raft of civilians. So it's taking kind of an initial idea and then slowly but surely expanding it to be a look that is much more simplistic than perhaps the Earth's look as a community. But for these dramatic purposes, I try to keep it very specific, so you can sort of, you don't need a program to tell the players. You know, you can look at it and go, oh, that's a Bajor. And now they all have little funny noses and stuff, so you can tell pretty easily.
So, on this, you're sort of keeping this dolman kind of
yeah, it's
insert.
not really a dolman. It's kind of it's a yoke because it's a set-in sleeve, so it doesn't make it be a dolman. Because if we did that, they would have no mobility. Because a dolman, so you have to get that arm's eye high so they can still do this. But it's just to give this saddle yoke so it looks peculiar, something we're not used to seeing. And then on a very tight fit.
Are there any sketches you might show us that you
I have
here?
a few sketches. I have about 2 days, 3 days from the time I get the script to get it on paper, get it approved, and then we have another somewhere between 4 to 10 days to make it, depending on how it comes up in the shooting schedule. So it's very quickly done. It's all really overnight work. So I came up with this thing, and it didn't please me, but it was a place to start with. And it was about kind of bodies that had kind of planes and angles to them, so that they were described as very thin, very wiry, and nasty. Essentially, was about all we got out of it. So I kind of did this weird haystack hair and all this stuff, and this funny helmet. Well, that didn't wash at all. That was like a real throw that thing away. Where'd you go? So I went to this, and we've got. I wish I could bring them down because we did these. These actually appeared, and they were on very thin, quite angular men who had to be 6 foot, you know, so that we had a real vertical line. And all of this work was done with L200 foam, which is, or 2000 L200, some polyurethane foam, which was then, shapes were cut and glued together to get the whole contour, and then they were covered in stretched leather. And there was a jacket and then these pants, and they were skin tights, and then they had these invisible zippers I keep talking about that were put on you, and it would take like 3 people to get one leg zipped up because you'd have to hold it. So these were really fairly remarkable. They looked great. They were a great experiment. They weren't very successful. They couldn't hold up. We busted the zippers all the time. The actor, though, we built in movement at places. It just wasn't flexible enough. So from that, I then, when they became the villains, I started just noodling and doodling and started just doing these things, which this is really how I really work. I mean, now the real truth is out. He does hangnails. They're not even thumbnails. But I just start doodling with shapes, and then the shape grows, and it becomes something. And here's one where I was playing around with a trapunto quilting thing, and here was another one. And they're just... And I just do them. They're the old scripts that have been recycled into notepads. We're very ecologically sound here. And eventually you can see, as we get to here, that this starts moving into that bigger sketch that you saw. And then that's where I got started on it and started working it out. And then drew up the big sketch. I think here is a bigger Xerox of that one. But again, these are just ones, these smaller ones blown up bigger. Mm-hmm. Oh, here's a photo. I don't know if this will show up, but this is what the original ones look like. They have one of the really amazing features of the makeup are these neck extensions, which glue to the side of the neck, and they really stick out. And and we've done them even greater than we did originally. So Michael Westmore has come up with a wonderful way to do these, and they really are quite remarkable looking. This is an actor, Mark Alaimo, who was the original first speaking Cardassian.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking us on this tour.
Sure.
And we'll be going back to the studio.
You got it. Can't wait.
We're back here in the studio. Welcome. And now we're going to go to our studio audience, who is just brimming with excitement, I can tell. Aren't you guys? Yes? Yes? Dying to ask you questions, Robert.
Great.
So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Who's got a... Yes.
Yeah,
over there.
I'm Dan Peters, and I'm an actor. And I'm just curious, do any of the actors or the crew on your show ever bring you ideas for costumes for some of the characters?
No. Darn it. No, actually not. The actors might have an idea, the permanent, the regulars might have an idea about something in a particular episode that they might have a feeling about. But even that, for the most part, it doesn't happen. You know, everyone is so busy with what they have to do. Because we do 26 episodes with one hiatus, that's it. We take two weeks at the holidays, and that's it. So it's just nonstop, 10.5 months. It's all you can do to your own work, it seems to me.
But you would be open to it if...
Oh, please, bring those drawings right to me, right now. Honest to goodness. Not kidding.
Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to ask a question about the budget. What kind of budget is there for the costumes for the show, and is that determined by the season or by the episode or by the alien planet?
There is a pattern budget which will remain unmentioned, the actual figure, but there is a pattern budget that is assigned. It's not, I don't quite know how it's based on, but there is a pattern budget that we have. Some episodes we are encouraged to go under pattern. We're always encouraged to stay on pattern. At other points, we are allowed to go over pattern if the episode warrants that. The real thing is to stay on or under pattern for the entire year. You know, so it's one pot. So each week it seems like it's we've gone to the bank again, but it's really the same amount of money that you have for the whole year. It's just how it's divvied up, and it has a lot to do with what other departments are doing. I mean, obviously, when you're doing something in science fiction, everything costs. We don't buy anything. I mean, besides fabric and time. So everything is MO'd, which is shorthand for made to order. So it all costs. We're on a Paramount, which is a signatory lot. So it, thank goodness, observes all the union requirements, meaning health, welfare, pension, fringes, all of that stuff. So nothing is inexpensive. There's a flexibility to it. And certainly, the thing you don't want to do is to go over whatever you say your budget for the show is for that episode. It's really an ugly experience, having done it a couple of times. You find your ways around it, but people are very nervous for a while.
Yes.
Yes, hi, I'm Denise Paulino. I'm a former student, and you were saying a while ago that you get some inspiration for your costumes from ethnic costumes. Do you also get inspirations from period costumes from history?
Sure.
Such as?
Well, it's a little trickier for me because because of all the holodeck stuff, and we've been doing a lot of it in the last year and a half. I get having come from a history of doing period clothes, I really get I'm getting my fill of it. I mean, I've had my fill of it, and now I'm really getting to have some more dessert because it's something I'm very comfortable with doing. I think I spent 6 years of my life in the 19th century. So, I mean, I pretty much know anything from about 1790 to about 1912. And that's a little egotistical, but I've done a lot of work in that period. So when we go back to those times, it's a comfortable moment for me because it's like going back to an old friend and you know how to deal with it. So I don't really draw upon period clothes as inspiration for the future per se. There may be a silhouette that creeps in, but really is kind of cellular memory rather than a conscious thing going. Current trends and more ethnic things I tend to use. Now you might say, well, the ethnic things, what does that mean? And that could be Asian clothes or whatever, I'm not sure. But I think I'd probably say national dress rather than anything else.
I thought I detected a toga kind of
oh, no togas, no togas. We're not allowed to do anything.
Roman
nope.
drapey kind of thing in the Klingon queen there? Or?
Oh, Vulcan.
Vulcan,
oh,
I mean Vulcan.
Wash your mouth
Sorry,
out.
Vulcan.
No, it's only that over drape, which is really just a straight length drape. You might think of that as a toga, but we stay away from anything that has any kind of Greco-Roman draping to it. It's not very acceptable. It's recognizable as sort of long ago and far away science fiction. It's what the early science fictions always used to go to, so we try to stay away from that. It doesn't stop me from drawing it now and again. They're just never accepted.
Yes.
My name is Kristen Van Fleet, and I'm a student at USC for design. And I would like to know more, what was it like for you
to break into the business, what advice can you give to like me, an aspiring designer?
I came here and again, kind of by a series of good breaks. I'm could be president of the Lucky Club. I just happened to I slip in. I mean, there have been some tough times within that, but so I don't. It's hard for me to give advice in that way because I can't really tell you what to do. I think that if you want to do theater, it's one way to do it. There's one way to do it. And if you want to do movies and television, there's another way to do it. I think that there are ways to sort of intern or apprentice in television and movies, and maybe perhaps get yourself attached to someone who is in the industry. But because of the union part of it, it is so tricky. It takes quite a long time to work your way up through it. It's not, none of it's impossible, but it is very tricky because of the unionization. Makes you happy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I wish I could be more, and I wish I could have a more kind of promising picture of it. I think the main thing is for you, for anybody who wants to do anything, whether it's an actor, designer, puppeteer, garbage man, whatever you want to do as your career. I mean, it's about determination, it's about focus, and it's about wanting to do it, really wanting to do it, not from the point of fantasy. Wouldn't it be great? I've always wanted to draw dresses and do whatever it is, but from the point of view that I'm willing to go in and sort shoes at Western Costume for however long it takes for me to get my 30 consecutive days at $4.50 an hour sorting shoes and essentially being a gopher to get the 30 days that will then get me into 705, which is the Costumers Union. It's not even the Costume Designers Guild, but it's the Costumers Union. So, I mean, it's that kind of determination that you're willing to sort through rotten shoes, spray thing, do the worst possible things that you can think of in the wardrobe department. Because it's just that way, that there's a pecking order. It's not sort of a glamorous arrival at all. In fact, there's no glamour in showbiz. There's no glamour. It's hard work for every single person. Yes?
My name's Howard Schmidt. I teach costume classes at USC. On the idea of no glamour in the work, what is your work week like in terms of hours?
Right now, it's about 11 to 12 hours a day, which is sort of a standard movie day. During the pilot, it was a little, when I was doing the series and the pilot for the new series, it was a little longer than that. They were 12, 14, 15. I sort of would just throw up my hands and walk out at 15 and say, that's enough. So they're long days, and I don't have formalized breaks or meals. I mean, the people that work for me are kind enough to remember that maybe I need food, and will, ask me and find and get what I need, and I'm usually eating with one hand and drawing or talking. I'm on a flat, which means I get a weekly salary, and whether I do 2 hours or whether I do 200 hours, that's what I get. As long as that's contained within 5 days. When I go to a 6th day, then I get more money. If I go to a 7th day, the Brinks truck backs up, so there you have it.
Yes.
Have you ever had any of the actors complain about the costume where you had to rework it or something because they found it uncomfortable or they just found it too difficult to work in? No. There have been complaints. There are complaints sometimes now and again. I think when you come to Star Trek, and you pretty much, if you walk in thinking that you're going to be wearing normal clothes and look like yourself, you're coming in with a problem already, and everything and anything is going to be a shock. And that happened only once my first season. There was an actor who had no idea that he was going to wear more rubber than you could ever imagine, than deep sea divers, on his face, and it was a big issue for him. And when they come in, the makeup takes about 4 hours, so they come in at 4:18 in the morning to kind of get dressed somewhere within that 4-hour call, because there'll be a break where we'll get them and start putting them in their outfits. And this guy came over and he was just, and I said, well, you have two choices. There are the choices. You either walk out of the room ripping the rubber off your face, or you say, I'm going to do it. There are only two choices. There's none of. They're not going to take half of it off and say, "Oh well, now we like it because you're happy." Guess what? Not going to happen. So no, there's not much about that. We're pretty good about the comfort zone because I have to wear them for so long, and a lot of them are made out of things that are synthetic, and it's not. Though they may be comfortable because they stretch, they're not necessarily comfortable because of heat or. Because of the synthetics tend to retain heat. So we're very conscious of that. We're very conscious of bathroom necessities, and so the jumpsuits have escape hatches built into them so that you can not have to take the whole thing off to go to the bathroom. All kinds of things. So there's about 24 of us that work as a skeleton crew now that do the 2 series. It's a lot. I'm happy that I'm employing that many people at a time, and when people are not employed in the industry right now, so I'm very proud of that.
If you were not doing the current projects you're working on, is there a fantasy project you have? If you could do anything in the world, film, television, theater?
Well, as I said before, I think of myself as a designer, and so I'd like to design once for everything, It'd be great to do the circus once, or the Ice Follies, or Las Vegas, or I don't know, an opera, big opera.
Big opera.
To go to Denmark and do some, except I've done all the Ibsen plays, why would I want to do another one? But do another, but do it there where they really get into the depressing notion of it. But something, I'm interested in doing as many different things as possible. It's why Star Trek is interesting to me, because every week it's something new. Mm-hmm. When I was doing sitcoms and it would be another, A-line skirt in a different color, I found myself embroidering. Meaning, this became the most complicated A-line skirt you've ever seen. A pencil skirt's a pencil skirt is a pencil skirt. What can you do? Blue, green, red, yellow. So I found myself just making it more complicated simply because I needed to keep my interest up.
What would you say are some of the largest differences between your role in a television series versus on a film?
The difference here, I think that for me, the television thing is in a funny way more rewarding, but more difficult because it is unending. It is like the lemmings into the sea. They just keep coming. Oh, another week, another outfit.
Well, speaking of things that just keep coming, I hope that the Emmys keep mounting on your mantle there.
Great, I got that too.
Congratulations on your award winning
Thank
this
you.
year and
Thank
your
you.
nomination the previous year,
Thank you.
correct? And we're going to wrap this up now. Thank you, Robert Blackman.
Well, thank you.
Costume designer for Star Trek The Next Generation and for Deep Space Nine. Thank you to all of our audience for joining us today. And we hope that to all folks here and there, that your creativity has been sparked, and we hope that that spark will bring you to great success, as it has to Mr. Robert Blackman. Thank you.
Thank you.